The problem with the FL Studio default limiter is that its main feature, the limiter, is actually its weakest part. By default, it ends up squashing transients, making drums sound muffled, and lacking in punch. The release time is too long, making the track duck and give it this awkward, inconsistent volume to the mix. And to top it off, it's on by default in every project you start. So, any beginner who's just starting out in FL Studio, who isn't going to know all the little details of mastering, is going to have this one-key limiter smushing his mix, in my opinion, in an unpleasant way. I urge you, if you haven't already, go to New from Templates, Minimal, Basic without limiter. This way, every time you start, you won't have your track going into the limiter. I understand the thought process behind this. Beginner producers, even more intermediate producers, are always asking, why are my tracks so quiet and why aren't they as loud as the mixes I hear on the radio or elsewhere? But I'll let you hear for yourself how much FL limiter can affect your mix. I'll also compare other limiters and see how they stack up. I'll take the hat off. I have a drum loop here, but we're gonna turn on our limiter and we're gonna start boosting it. So I'll put it around 5.5. Even though the limiter is turning it back down to make sure nothing goes over, the average volume is still going to be higher because there are parts of the mix that don't get limited, but they still will get that boost of gain. By the way, this is the default. All I did was just turn up the gain. So let's go look for another limiter. I'm going to use Pro L. So yeah, that's also going to be 5.6. This was also the default. I didn't change anything. I just put it on. However, something I already noticed is that the transients of the drums already sound a lot sharper. So let's actually compare them this time. And I'll turn one off and then turn the other on. This is pretty transparent when you compare it to the Fruity limiter. You can still hear the transients. They still sound very nice and crisp. However, the Fruity limiter one, not only is it not as sharp and crispy, it just sounds like there's actually compression or something. And I think that's more to do with the release time of the limiter. It takes a long time to recover after it peaks. I think that's a night and day difference. Now there's some other limiters out there. Some are free. I think Clip Shifter is a free limiter. You can try those out. However, if you only have Fruity limiters to work with, then you're gonna have to make do. And so I'm gonna try and find better ways of changing and working with Fruity limiter. See if we can get a lot closer and a lot more transparent. Let's try that. So if I make this like exaggerated long, then all this long release time, that's gonna make it have that compression sort of sound. However, the shorter it is, the less noticeable that should be. Now, the shorter it is, you may also get more distortion that way. We'll find out. That volume ducking that happens each time it goes over 0 dB, it doesn't happen as long. It just like, oh, okay, we're done. Let's go back to normal. Now I'm just gonna try and messing around with the attack. What I've noticed is that the shorter the attack is, the more distortion you will hear. Especially on that kick. That kick really makes it stand out. And the longer time is a bit safer, less distortion, but also quieter overall. Now I think already turning the attack and release down has made it a lot better of a result. We can compare it to what it was before just by getting the default limiter. This is new and this is default. Okay, so this was the default preset. And this is our new preset that we just made. I think it's a lot closer of a comparison to the Pro L. That was also default, and we could probably tweak that and make that even cooler. But already, this new version comes a lot closer than the default version did. And this is just drums. I chose drums because dynamics are a big part of the drums. But most tracks don't just have drums. They have bass and chords, which will also get affected depending on how you limit your track. So that's it. That's all the problems addressed with Fruity limiter, right?
Wrong.